The Mindfulness Bible by Dr. Patrizia Collard, The Complete Guide to Living in the Moment, Part 1, The Origin and Uses of Mindfulness, including recent research, Chapter 3, Mindful Therapies. Chapter 3, Part 2, Other Therapeutic Applications of Mindfulness. There is currently a lot of general interest in mindfulness based interventions, and research is focusing on a vast spectrum of disease management. Teaching participants to become more mindful assists them in reconnecting to the experience of being rather than doing. This in turn increases their individual effectiveness and, as a byproduct, personal productivity. In psychotherapeutic work, being mindful is a life skill that expands alertness and helps us to be truly present. And it is taught in a variety of therapeutic approaches, aside from MBCT, described over the next few pages. MBSR, for example, is used generically, but in particular for chronic pain management and stress. MBCC, on the other hand, helps people deal with stress at work, among other things. ACT is another type of behavioral therapy that uses some aspects of mindfulness for overcoming low moods or anger. And DBT has helped adolescents with borderline personality disorders who tend to use drugs and engage in self-harm. Mindfulness based stress reduction, MBSR. MBSR is a group based program that was designed and developed by John Kabat-Zinn and his colleagues in the University of Massachusetts Medical School Center for Mindfulness for patients with an extensive variety of physical and mental health problems. Plenty of research has investigated the outcome of this 8-week course since late 1979. The FM Center for Mindfulness has delivered MBSR to people needing medical help, and in 1993, Bill Moyers, a well-known American reporter, participated in the program and had one of the courses filmed. The series looked at a variety of alternative medicine programs and was entitled Healing from Within. This was how MBSR became known to a much wider audience, and the series triggered huge interest in both the general and the medical population. By the beginning of the new millennium, more than 10,000 patients had completed the CFM course. It was then that John Kabat-Zinn and other trainers started teaching MBSR in prisons, in rundown inner city areas, in education and among medical students and professional sport and corporate environments. MBSR is now an acknowledged treatment option in the field of integrative medicine within behavioral medicine and general health care. Its potential lies not only in treatment but also in the prevention of illness. In MBSR, the ancient tradition of Buddhist mindfulness is adopted from its use as a spiritual practice and is presented as an accessible secular treatment option. It helps participants to conquer many difficulties that are faced when suffering from a variety of physical and psychological ailments. The original training is not modified for any particular diagnosis, and yet MBSR research has shown overall positive results for those suffering from chronic pain, fibromyalgia, multiple sclerosis, generalized anxiety disorder, and panic attacks, cirrhosis, certain types of cancer, and other ailments. Participants are trained intensively in mindfulness meditation and yoga movements and embrace information on stress and life skills. Mindfulness based cognitive coaching MBCC. MBCC brings together two approaches in a model that provides the client with more control over and enjoyment of his or her daily life. The synthesis between mindfulness training and cognitive behavioral coaching that led to the birth of MBCC provides the individual with skills and strategies to devise new and healthier beliefs about self, others, and the world in general, and with the ability to connect to the present. These skills are interwoven with awareness training. An example might be helping clients to identify self defeating core beliefs that lead to unhelpful emotional and behavioral consequences. Being mindful, that is present in this moment when your life is actually happening, differs significantly from the way in which the 24/7 lifestyle has tended to shape people's experience in the 21st century. The ability to connect with what is termed the here and now stimulates a completely different psychological response as different parts of the nervous system become activated, allowing the experience to take on new meaning. There is significant evidence that learning to experience life from moment to moment can create calm and well being, whereas overplanning, ruminating, and fretting trigger the so called stress response, which can lead to physical and mental illness. MBCC tends to be applied to client groups who do not fall within the medical or therapeutic client arenas. It works with people who have begun to notice minor changes in their sleep, concentration, and interpersonal relationships. The client is encouraged to consider how a more realistic and compassionate way of perceiving the world can increase personal effectiveness and decrease negative emotional outcomes for everyone concerned. This process assists in the creation of the behavioral changes that are required to produce a more effective way of being. The phenomena of wanting to remain well in a culture that rarely permits enough time to recuperate from long working hours, commuting, and less than healthy living environments is in itself deeply paradoxical. The concepts of meaning and purpose have been acknowledged as key factors in increasing the psychological as well as physical resilience, something that is equally important whether it is related to work or to life in general. MBCC can be used with individuals as well as with groups, and the client needs to be an active participant in his or her coaching program. The relevance and the benefits of using mindful approach to work and life are explored in a relation to the client's presenting issues. The coach and client then decide on the best way of engaging in the MBCC process. Commitment is an essential requirement to ensure the best possible outcome, and the client is made aware of this right from the start. Some practices may only take a few minutes, but as James Walsh and I found during our study in 2008, clients can reap the benefits even from such short periods of practice. The learning of mindful awareness increases with each and every application. A journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. Acceptance and Commitment Therapy, ACT. ACT. Stephen Hayes, the founder of ACT, believes that for psychological science to progress, there needs to be a synergy between empiricism, theory, and observation. How can someone commit to living an adventurous and purposeful life while suffering from emotional or physical pain? ACT, or the Acceptance and Commitment Therapy, is an active psychoeducational application of mindfulness, employing metaphors to communicate the multifaceted concept of mindfulness. as well as using cognitive behavioral exercises and homework to apply mindfulness to specific case formulations. ACT is suited to one-on-one therapy but can be applied to groups. Research shows that it has better outcomes in decreasing depressive thoughts than CBT and scores higher in pain management. Acceptance and commitment therapy is an intellectually deep and complex therapy focusing on 6 core processes: acceptance, cognitive diffusion, being in the present, looking at oneself as an observer, values and committed actions to increase psychological flexibility, which means being in touch with the present moment fully and on purpose, changing or persisting with behavior in the service of the chosen principles. Currently, traditional CBT has a much larger base of research than ACT, and this supports its validity. ACT focuses largely on addressing communication barriers and thus can only be effective for clients who do not have language deficits either in using or in understanding language. According to Stephen Hayes, in Get Out of Your Mind and Into Your Life, ACT is not about fighting your pain, it's about developing a willingness to embrace every experience life has to offer. It's not about resisting your emotions, it's about feeling them completely and choosing what matters to you most. The ultimate purpose of theory and philosophy is to guide the behavior of the therapist through new territory. Dialectical Behavior Therapy (DBT). DBT was originally developed by Marsha M. Linehan, who worked as a researcher in the Department of Psychology at the University of Washington, where she looked after patients with borderline personality disorder. Such patients tend to self-harm and suffer from intense mood swings, and they also present a suicide risk. Linehan's treatment approach combined traditional cognitive interventions in order to regulate emotion. It also aimed to help people cope with suffering and mental imbalance and achieve acceptance and awareness using methods largely derived from Buddhist meditative practices. It probably became the first therapy that demonstrated itself to be generally effective in treating BPD, borderline personality disorder. It has also proved quite effective with sexual abuse survivors and with clients who are dependent on drugs. The main purpose of DBT is for the therapist to befriend the client. The psychotherapist aims to believe in and validate the client's feelings at any given time. Simultaneously, the patient learns that some feelings and behaviors are maladaptive and destructive and is shown various alternatives to them. DBT consists of a variety of components and 2 specific parts of treatment. Part 1 looks at one-to-one treatment aspect. The therapist and the patient discuss the various problems that arise during the week, which are recorded on diary cards. The treatment follows a hierarchy with self-harm and suicidal behaviors taking priority. Next in terms of precedence are behaviors that are not self-harming but that interfere with the treatment. The approach also investigates the client's quality of life. During the whole session, the therapist and the patient work towards improving life skills. Part 2 is a group approach in which a number of clients in treatment meet once a week for 2 to 3 hours and practice how to use specific skills. These skills are broken down into 4 modules: core mindfulness skills, interpersonal effectiveness skills, emotion regulation skills, and distress tolerance skills. DBT also strongly recommends that all therapists attend weekly peer supervision and make themselves available to the client through telephone coaching between sessions. This is how the therapist becomes an intrinsic part of client's world. Both parts of treatment are used together to avoid potential suicidal urges disrupting the group sessions. There is a general rule when it comes to certain aspects of DBT that applies to clients and therapists alike. Any individual who misses 4 consecutive DBT meetings can no longer work with their pre-assigned DBT therapist, no matter how long they have been working together. This rule is used to encourage participation. It could, however, be interpreted as penalizing patients since hospitalizations for medical purposes are not exempt. Anyone who wishes to use DBT needs to be really committed and willing to share what is happening in their lives. It has grown into a very popular treatment model since its early stages, although the training for therapists is extremely expensive. With that, chapter 3 of part 1 ends. The next chapter would be chapter 4 from part 1, Finding Compassion.